Composting is turning organic matter into some form of usable fertilizer or amendment. We're going to cover the 4 most common types of composting: heap, tumbler, vermicomposting, and bokashi. We're going to start with the basic types, which use a balance of green and brown materials in a proper ratio to heat up and break down to a usable fertilizer. Heap and tumbler are what usually use this. Now, for context, green materials are things that are high in nitrogen. Generally, they tend to be the color green, like fruit, veggie scraps, fresh lawn clippings, fresh leaves, and ironically coffee grounds, even though they're brown. Brown materials are high in carbon, like shredded newspaper, wood strips, dried leaves, cardboard packages. Though if you use cardboard packages, make sure to get rid of the plastic, because that doesn't break down in microplastics and all that junk. Now, you generally use these two if you want to do stuff outdoors. The prerequisites are you need greens, browns, water, and this is an aerobic composting technique, which means it uses oxygen for it. As the aerobic composting takes place, heat is generated and sometimes visually even steam. It can get very, very hot. Proper turning is important to avoid smelly or inefficient piles. And in some large-scale cases, like industrially, if you don't turn them properly, they can even light on fire, though this is only very large-scale things, and the science behind it is a little more interesting than you expect. I can make a video on that if you like. Generally, you want 2 parts brown material to 1 part green material. If you keep it well aerated, 90% of your problems just won't happen. You'll be perfectly fine. Tumbler composting systems are very useful if you want to use a small amount of space. It's basically an enclosed bin that you can buy or make pretty simply yourself. They're better for small spaces, but tend not to have a lot of storage capacity as a downside. Since it's enclosed, you don't have to worry about neighbors complaining as much as the following heat type bins, and turning tends to be quite quick, easy, and simple. You can just physically rotate it yourself, or install a simple crank system where you can just turn it a couple times. Do that once, twice, maybe 3 times a week. Now, then there's the heap system, which is the most famous composting, and you probably imagine when I say composting thing. This can be a 1 or a 3 bin system, and this is just how many bins you have, so you can transfer your compost as it reaches certain ages to avoid leaving in some parts too long and others not long enough. So you don't have fresh greens and stuff in your finished product, and you don't have stuff that could have been taken out a year ago in your fresh bin still, all mixed together and weird. Effectively, you layer green and brown materials together, and then periodically you add some water and mix everything up. That mixing is very important. That is the biggest thing that will solve most of your problems. If it's smelly, if it's getting pest problems, usually if you just mix it up more, or maybe you're adding a little bit too much water, that'll fix it. You can take everything out and put it back in. You can use a compost aerator tool, which is like a auger drill type thing that kind of brings stuff to the top. It just matters, get air to it. It's aerobic. The microorganisms need air to be able to work efficiently. If not, other things will take over and they can be stinky and slimy and smelly, and no one likes that. It sucks and it's bad. And you get some lovely free compost. Now, next is vermicomposting. Verma means worms. So this is worm composting. It sounds gross, and my first impression is I never want to touch this, but after seeing a setup in person, the little red wiggler worms are actually surprisingly cute, or at the very least not terrifying. And generally speaking, unless something is wrong, you'll never really see them. This is a setup that works indoors and takes very, very little space. Basically, you have a bin or some sort of container, which you can buy or make super cheap yourself. You can go down to the container store, buy 3 things, and make a really good system. Basically, all you need is some bedding layer, like newspaper, and a small populations of red wiggler worms, or some similar breed worms that eat your food scraps and make worm castings, which are a super useful soil amendment, which we'll do a future video on. Red wigglers self-regulate their population, so if you give them more food, they'll start reproducing more. And if you start feeding them less, they'll slow down and lower their numbers for you. There's only 3 real considerations for using vermicomposting. First is how you and anyone else who might be near them feels about worms. And I swear they're more cute and not as much of a menace as you're imagining. The reason why is if you mess up, the worms may try to escape, but as long as you keep a good environment for the worms, they'll stay in their bin. And they're completely harmless. Second is making sure you don't add too much water. And third is making sure they are in their proper temperature range. They're generally pretty flexible, but it's better for them to be on the inside, somewhere like a garage, so they're not getting snowed on or beamed to death by the sun. The nice thing about vermicomposting is that once you have the materials, it's very low maintenance. And you never really need to spend money on it again. Just toss in your scraps, and they'll take care of itself. Bokashi is a Japanese composting technique that's more like fermenting than the rest. Basically, you take a special bokashi bran, which is like a powder full of food and microorganisms for the bokashi. Then you add it to an airtight bin along with some food scraps and let it ferment. Bokashi is unique in the fact that it can compost meat and dairy, which is normally a massive no for composting. The bokashi leachate, which is the juice that comes out of it, is a liquid that can be diluted and then used as a fertilizer. What works for it is fruit, vegetable scraps, eggshells, grains, meat, dairy. What doesn't is liquids, anything moldy, salty food, and large bones. Generally speaking, for all types of composting, the smaller the particles or the more finely diced something is, the faster and more efficiently it will take place. If it's very large particles or pieces of things, it'll take longer and maybe won't break down as properly. So kind of to summarize everything, Bokashi is simple indoors, small, and convenient. Bokashi is simple, indoors, small, and convenient. However, you do have to continuously buy the Bokashi brand to make more batches, which isn't ideal. Vermicomposting is, in my opinion, the most well-rounded for residential composting, as long as you're comfortable with the worms, as it's a buy it once and it's good for the rest of your life type thing. While the worms can't eat meat scraps and dairy, they can eat pretty much whatever vegetable or cardboard and stuff like that. And then there's more traditional composting. The heap, where you have large piles, and then Tumbler, which is generally smaller but more compact. These tend to be better for more large scale, like if you have a farm or some sort of agricultural hub or trying to start a large community thing, then those may be the better choices, especially towards the heap one. But that's more of a if you scale to many people. Let me know if you want me to do any deep dives on any of these in particular, or any aspects, like a spontaneous combustion, or how Bokashi works, or how vermicomposting works, or stuff like that. Shorts, like, subscribe, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.